In this lecture, I'm going to talk about a very important fact to keep in mind. I'm throwing the conclusion here. Your audience is always and is only the judges of this debate. So since the debate is a sport that you compete with your opponent, a lot of novice debaters will mistakenly be trying to convince their opponents. However, as we all know that the last thing you want to do is to compromise on your claim. You are instantly out of the game the moment you agree with your opponent. So even though you feel like you're dominant in the game, you're completely crushing your opponent, they will not be convinced by you. They will always be looking for other ways to refute. However, the judges, as the third side of the debate, is the one that will be convinced and should be convinced. So from this fact, we can know that as debaters, we should not even be talking to our opponent, except for cross-acts. We should be focusing completely on explaining why our side is better to our audience, who are the judges. So I bet that most of the debate coaches or the books will include what I just said. But however, the most important thing that I want to include in this video is what we can get from this fact, what strategy we can make based on this fact. So one thing that most debaters might not have noticed that they are not only debating with their opponents, with their opposing team, they are also debating with the judges. So ideally, the judges should only judge based on the performance of both teams and not involving his or her own views. However, since our brains is a complex system, practically the judges cannot eliminate all their subjectivities. They became the third side of the debate who is testing the validity of the contentions from both sides. We not only have to attack and refute our opponents, we should also address potential concerns from the judges. We should polish our contentions as much as possible, even when the opposing team fail to make their refutations. So the judges are our worst opponent. And one strategy that we can develop here is that we should not base our contention on extreme ideas. Even though we ourselves might feel like our contentions makes perfect sense, but it might actually be difficult for the judges to accept. We should consider the cultural background of the judges and keep in mind that what we can say and what we cannot. So for example, even though that centuries ago slaveholders can still advocate for slavery and argue about the benefits brought by slavery. However, we know that nowadays there's no way that we can justify ourselves on the topic of slavery, since the idea that slavery is bad already becomes a self-evident truth instead of an arguable propositional fact. Also, if you're debating in places like China, drugs should be completely banned is a self-evident truth, and you can use it to justify your other arguments. However, we know that Canada and some states of the US have already legalized drugs, which turns drugs should be completely banned into a debatable propositional fact. So if you base your contentions on that, you have a chance of being attacked by your opponents. And if your judges is the left-wing liberalism, you are putting yourself in a huge disadvantage. And moreover, some ideas might sound good on paper, but were emotionally not acceptable. So I once was debated on the topic that this house believes that facial recognition system should be significantly limited. The affirmative is likely to make a point that limiting facial recognition is protecting people's privacy. As the negative side, it is a terrible idea to just rise up and say privacy doesn't matter. And actually, if you really think about it, even if the government is watching you 24 hours a day, even if the FBI is monitoring all your phone calls, if you don't know it and if you don't care about it and the government doesn't do anything to you, privacy really doesn't matter that much. The government is only interested in criminals and drug dealers, and they pay absolutely no attention to normal citizens like you and I. So, however, we have to understand that in this era, especially in America, people like privacy for a lot of reasons. So even though you feel like your theory sounds acceptable itself, the moment you say that you are going to take away people's privacy, the judges will mark you down. You might win the debate against the opposing team, but you will lose the debate against the judges. And that's it for this lecture. I'll see you in the next video.